Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can build a simple login application using the Passport local strategy. We are going to be using MongoDB to save the data, and Express is going to be the framework that our application will be built on. And as well, we are going to use Node.js. So this is a demo of the app that will be built. We are going to use Bootstrap to build the application. So it's just going to be an application with registration and login. So if the user clicks here, the user can go ahead and sign up. We are going to add some validations as well. We are going to see how to display all of these images. I can clear all of these out. So if I sign up a user with invalid data right here, and I click on register, you're going to see these error messages being displayed. So I'll clear this now. Then right here, then click on register. If it's successful, it will take us to the login page with this message. Now the user can log in and then click here on login. Now it's successful. The user will be taken to the dashboard. So I'm going to show you how to build this application. So to get started, I will have to open a command prompt. But here, before I start, the assumption I have here is that you already have Node.js installed on your machine, which is very important. If you don't have Node.js, you can just go to nodejs.org right here, nodejs.org, and then you can either install the long-term support version or the current version, or if you have a specific version in mind, but make sure that it's not later or less than version 8. So you can either install this long-term support version or the current version. So install that on your machine. Right now for me, I'm on a Windows machine. So once you have that installed, Node comes installed with npm, and also you are going to have a command line tool. And this is the command line tool that I have right here. So if I type node-v, you can see my version is version 10.15.0. Yours could be higher or could be less, but make sure it is not less than version 8. Also, I have npm-v right here. My npm version is 6.8.0. So I'm going to clear this out now. So once you have that installed, now if you have MongoDB installed on your machine, you can use the local installation of MongoDB. If you don't, then we are going to use the cloud MongoDB platform. You can either use MLab or use MongoDB Atlas, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But before then, we need to set up our project. So I'm going to go into the folder where I want to create my project. So this is going to be right here. So right here, I'm going to create a new directory. I'll use mk there, then I'll call it passport. You can call it whatever name you want. Then I'll cd into the folder that I just created. So I use the command line here, mk there, which is make directory passport. Then I use cd, then moved into the directory. Now I'm inside the directory. What I need to do now is to run the npm init command. So I'll say npm init -y. Now this -y flag is going to skip the information that is requested. So npm init -y. So now the project has been initialized using the npm init command. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. You can use any other text editor like Atom or Sublime Text or whichever one you feel comfortable with, but I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So I'll open the project inside Visual Studio Code right here. Now you can see I have my project right here. Now when we ran the npm init command, it created this package.json file. Now this is going to contain metadata about our application. So, and also it's going to contain the dependencies that will be used in our application. When we install Express, we're going to have the version number added to this package.json, and it's going to create a node_modules folder, which is going to contain the packages that will be installed. So the first thing that I need to do right now is, since we already have this package.json, let us set up the project. So first, I'm going to create a new file in the root directory. You can call it server.js or app.js or main.js, whichever one you want. I'll call this server, or let me call this app.js right here. So this is going to be the entry point to our application. So the server will be started. When the server is started, this file will be called. So before we add the setup inside our app.js file, we need to install some modules. Like I said, we're going to be using the Express framework to build our application. And also we are going to be using the EJS templates right here. And there are also some other modules that will be installed. So to get started, you can open the inbuilt VS Code terminal by typing or holding Control then backtick, or if you want, you can open it in your normal command line right here on Windows or on Mac. So the first thing I want to is to make sure that you are inside your project. So I'm going to type npm. If you're using npm, or if you want, you can use yarn. If you're using yarn, you just add yarn add, then the name of the module. Otherwise, we are going to use npm. So npm install, or you can say npm I for short. Then if you are using the latest version of npm, you don't need to add the -- save flag. It will automatically add it. So the first is Express. So we install Express. Then also we want to install EJS, which is the template that we're going to be using. And then Express-EJS-layout, which is the layout template as well for Express and EJS. Then we're going to be using the Mongoose objects relational model. So install Mongoose as well. As usual, we're going to install passport, or we can leave passport out for now, or let's just add it, passport. Then we are going to be displaying flash messages. So I'll say connect-flash. Then also we are going to be using session with our passport. So Express session. Then our password needs to be encrypted. So I'll say bcrypt.js right here. So we are going to install Express, which is the framework, EJS and EJS. Express EJS layouts are the templates we're going to use. We're going to use Mongoose to connect to our database or MongoDB, passport, then connect flash because we want to display flash messages, Express session because we are going to use it with passport, then bcrypt.js, then hit enter, then wait for this to install all of these modules. Now I got this error message right here. I think the reason is because the name of my project is passport and I want to install a module called passport. So I'm going to install other modules, leaving out passport for now. Then maybe later I'll just change the name of the folder. So hit enter right here. So the modules are being installed right now. You can see right here that the node_modules folder have been installed. Now all of the modules have been installed except the passports. I had to remove it because there was a conflict of name. The name of the project is passport, and you can see here I tried installing a module called passport. So what I'm going to do is, let me close this and see if I can rename this folder. So let me see if it's possible to rename right here. So what I'll do is I'll just pause this video, rename the folder, and continue. So right now I have renamed the project to passport-login-app. So with this, I believe we're not going to have the issue of conflict of names. So I'll open this up now. Let me install passport. Now the passport strategy that we're going to be using is the passport local strategy. Remember, Passport has different strategies for Facebook login, Twitter, Gmail, different kinds of strategies, but we are only going to be using the local strategy, which is going to involve authentication with the email and the password. So what I'm going to do, I'll say npm install passport, then passport dash local, because this is going to be the strategy that we are using. If you want to see this, you can go over here to passport.js, search for passport.js.org right here. So you can see it says Passport is a simple unobtrusive authentication for Node.js, and you can see the different strategies that are available. We have the Passport Facebook, HTTP bearer, Google OAuth. You can search. The strategy we want to use is the Passport local right here, and that is what we're installing right here. So I'll hit enter, wait for this to install. So right here you can see the passport module and the passport local module both have been installed. So now we have the modules that we need, even though not all. We are going to install if we need any other module. So now let us set up our application. So right here inside the app.js file, we need to add the modules. So say const express equal to require dash express. Then we can add mongoose right here, require here mongoose. We need other modules as well, so I'm going to require the express layout, const express layouts equal to require express EJS layouts. Then also const flash required connect flash. We also need to require the session, so const session equal to require right here express dash session. Also let us require passport, so const passport equal to require passport right here. Now the next thing we need to do, we need to create an instance of this express module right here. So we'll do that by saying const app equal to express. So we are creating an instance of this express application. So with this, we can have access to the listen method so that we can start our server, and we can also use the middlewares that are available in Express. So without this, you won't be able to have access to the middleware and some functions and methods available in the Express application. Save this. Now let us set up the MongoDB connect method or Mongoose connect method. So we need to connect our database using Mongoose. So it's going to be mongoose.connect. So Mongoose has a connect method right here, and you can see it takes the URI string, then also takes in some options. So right now we don't have the database set up either locally or on the cloud, so I'm just going to put an empty string. Then after that, pass in an object with URL, say use new URL parser, set it to true right here. Now this returns a promise, so you can either, if you want to maybe display a message in the console, you can add the then and catch methods. So you can do something like this. You can say console.log MongoDB or MongoDB database connected if you want, or you can pass the catch as well if you want to get any error message. Error right here. You can do a console.log with error right here. So you can do this. Otherwise, if you don't want this then and catch, you can just pass the mongoose.connect. Here where we have the empty string, that is where we are going to pass in our database string, and we're going to see how to do that. Now the next thing, we need to add the different middlewares for our application, like the layout, the Express layout, the Flash, the session, and even passport as well, because we need to initialize passport. So down here, the first thing I'm going to do is app.use. Now, because we initialized or created an instance of this Express application using this variable app, we have access to different methods available, like you can see them right here: connect, configure, whatever. So I want to use app.use. Now in Express, to set up a middleware, we use the use method. So say app.use, this is going to set up a middleware that will be made available throughout the whole application. So now we want to set up the layouts. I'm just going to pass in Express layouts right here, because the Express EJS layout has been defined up here. Then the next thing is we are going to set, or before then, let's go to the top. We need to have a way of serving static files, like maybe images, CSS, JavaScript. And we can do that using the app.use middleware, then express.static right here. Then we are going to pass in the name of the folder where we want all of those static files to be served from. You can call it whatever name, but I'm going to call this public. So if we want to add our own JavaScript file, we're going to add it into this public folder. Now with this middleware, Express will be able to serve all of those files. If you have CSS, if you have external CSS, or if you have images, they are all going to be added into this public folder. That is why I've added this middleware with express.static. You can call it whatever name you want, but make sure that you are able to create this folder. So now let me create this folder. I'll call it public right here. So if I want to add, maybe I decide to add an image or images to the application from this project, I'll add them into this public folder. And now with this middleware, they will be able to be served, and also CSS that we can create. Then the next thing is I need to set the view engine. Remember that we are using EJS. So I'll say app.set. Now I want to set the view engine, and I want to use EJS. There are different view engines you can use. You can use POG, you can use handlebars, you can use Express handlebars, you can use EJS. But here in this simple application, we are going to be making use of EJS. Then the next thing I want to do is we need a way of getting data from the form. So when we serve in our view, and when we create a form, our inputs, we need a way of getting them inside our controllers. And we can do that either by installing a third-party module called body parser, or we can use the body parser that has been integrated into Express. So we don't need to install another external module to do that. So when we create a form inside our view, we need a way of getting the data from the inputs, maybe an input of type tests, or an input of type checkbox, or whatever input or test area. We need a way of getting the data. So I'm going to say app.use. Then I'll say express.url encoded right here. And I'm going to pass in an object, and I'll set extended to true. So with this middleware now, we should be able to get our data from our form. Then the next thing is I want to set up the session, because we already installed Express session right here, and we want to use it with passport. So I'll say app.use. Then right here, I'll pass in session, and inside the session method, I'll pass in the object with some properties. So the first is we need to pass in the secrets. Here, this is my secret here. Now, normally in normal application, you're not going to do this. You're going to be serving this from an environment file. But just for demonstration purposes, we'll just leave the secrets. Then the next is receive. Add the receive property. We'll set it to true. Then the last is save on initialized. Set it to true as well. So with this receive property, whenever maybe a user logs out and logs in, we should be able to receive the user's data. Then add this save uninitialized as well. Some people usually set this to false, but I'll just leave this as true. So now we've created this express middleware or the session middleware right here. Now what I want to do next is I need to initialize passports, and we can do that by using the middleware app.use, then passports.initialize right here, and also app.use passports.session right here. Now make sure that you initialize passports after you've been able to add the session middleware. So if you try to add this middle passports initialize and passport session middleware before you initialize this session, it's not going to work the way we want. So make sure you initialize this passport here after you've initialized the session. Then the next thing is we need to call this flash, and we do that after we've initialized passport with app.use, then call flash. Now with this app.use middleware, it's going to allow all of this to be made available throughout our application. That is why we are defining them inside our app.js file and using the app.use middleware. Then the last thing we need to do here is to call the app.listen method so that we can listen for or start our server. And I'm going to use port 3000, and you can add the callback right here. If you want, you can say console.log server listening on port 3000. But if you decide that you want to deploy your application to a cloud service, it will make much sense to define it this way. Say const port equal to process.env.port or 3000 or whatever, 3001 or 5000, whichever one you want. So I would leave mine as 3000, and then right here you just pass in ports. Then here I'll use a template string, so I can say use backticks server running on ports, then use the curly braces, then add the port right here. So with this now, if you decide to maybe deploy to Heroku usually sets its own port number. So with this, Heroku will use this to set the port number. But if you're on a local development, it's going to make use of this port 3000. Or if this port number is not set, then it will make use of this port number we've defined right here. So with this now, we've added the simple setup. Now what we need to do is we need to run our server. I'll run the server using the module called nodemon. So if you don't have nodemon installed, so all you just need is npm install -g globally. So with this -g flag, it's going to install the module globally. So I'll call it nodemon. So nodemon will allow us to install or restart our server, or it will automatically restart the server whenever we make changes to any of our JS files. Maybe if you make a change inside this app.js, it's going to automatically restart the server, so we don't have to stop and start the server again. So wait for this module to be installed. So now nodemon has been installed globally. I didn't install it locally just for this particular project, so I can use it. So if I clear this now. So now to start the server using nodemon, you can just type either nodemon, you hit enter, or you add the name of the entry file. Mine is app, yours could be server, could be main or index. But something we need to do before we go down there, go to your package.json. Here the main file, I'm going to change mine to app.js right here. And I'll save this, go back, open the terminal. I'll say nodemon app.js or nodemon app, whichever one. Hit enter, wait for this. Now if you have this error message, that is okay. The reason is because we've not added the string into our mongoose.connect. Now let us do that. You can either do this in two ways, like I said. You can either use the local MongoDB if you have it installed. So if you have MongoDB already installed on your machine, all you just need to do is right here in this string or empty single quotes. So you type MongoDB : /localhost : 27017, then / the name you want to call your database. So I can call it passport login. Well, okay, passport login. I can leave it that way, or passport login app or whatever. So you do it this way if you want to use your local MongoDB you have already installed on your machine. But if you don't have MongoDB already installed on your machine, and maybe you want to use a different cloud service, all you just need to do is copy the string. Once you create the database, copy the string that is provided and you add it right here. Now for those that don't already have MongoDB installed, let's try to see how we can create a database using MongoDB Atlas. So go to the browser. Let me open this, or open a new tab. Then you go to MongoDB Atlas right here. So search for MongoDB Atlas. So you can see it says MongoDB Atlas is a fully managed cloud database developed by the same people that build MongoDB Atlas handles or whatever. So you just click here. Now what you just need, you can just read through this so you understand what this offers. Now if you don't want to MongoDB Atlas, you can also use MLab. So first thing you need to do is, if you don't already have an account, so try and create a new account. You can just come right here, just add email, first name, last name, password. So you create a new account, and once you create a new account, then you go to sign up, or sign in rather. So you click right here. You should be able to sign in with your new credentials. So I'm going to sign in right here, and then click here on login. So once the login is successful, the next thing you need to do is, if you don't have any cluster, you need to build or create a new cluster. So I already have a dev cluster that I created here, and you can see the type here is a sandbox account. So just click right here, build a new cluster. Here, what you just need to do is, the provider, you can select whichever, either AWS. So select this, then you select the region. If you're in North America, select the region. If you're in Europe or Australia, just select a particular region, and then you can move down. You need to add a cluster name. Now right here, if you click on this cloud tier, we are using the free cloud right here. You can see right here automatically selected this because we want to use the sandbox account. Then the next thing is, here we don't really need to worry about this because it's not free. We are just doing this for development purposes. Now for the cluster name, you need to add a cluster name. Just call it whatever name you feel like. You can call it dev cluster, just like I did, or whatever you want to call it. So add a cluster name right here. It depends on you. Then once you're able to add the cluster name, then you should click on this create cluster. So make sure you change the cluster name. Then after selecting here the cloud provider and the region, then you click here on create cluster. So once you're able to do that, it should take you to this page. Right here, you see the name of the cluster that you created. Then the next thing you need to do is, if you go to security, you need to create a new database user, so that you have the email, or you have the username or whatever, and the password for the database user. So you can click here, add new user. So what I just did is, here on this tab, go to security, then click on add new user. Now what we want is, we want to be able to read and write to the database. So just click on this read and write to any database, add a username and password you can remember. So once you do that, click on add user. I already have my own username and a password created. Then after doing that, you go to IP whitelist. So click on this IP whitelist. right here. Then you click on this add IP address. What we want to do, we want to add the IP so that the application can be accessible from anywhere. Or if you just want it to be accessible, or the database, you want it to be accessible from only a specific IP, you can add it. Click on add IP address. You can either add your own current IP right here, or you can just add 0.0.0.0/0. Now what this will do is it's going to allow the database to be accessible from all or different IPs. But if you want it from only your specific IP, you just click on this button right here, so it will be added to the whitelist. Now once you have that, you can go back to overview, and then you can click on this connect button. So click here. Now we want to choose a way we want to connect to the database. You can either connect via Mongo shell, you can either connect using URL, or you can connect either using MongoDB Compass. I'm going to click connect your application using this. Then right here, depending on the version of MongoDB you have, either MongoDB 3.4 or MongoDB 3.6. So if you click this, now you can see we have this string right here. So all you just need to do is copy this string, copy this, you can close this right here, and then go back to your application. Now inside your application, what you can do is, if you don't want to directly add the string, create a new folder. I'll call it config. Then inside the config, I'll add a new file. I'll call it secret.js. Now inside this secret.js, I'm going to create a new URL as an empty string. Then I'm going to say module.export. Now this module.export will allow whatever we have inside this file to be accessible in other files or other parts of the application. So then I'll call it Mongo URI, and I'll set it equal to this URL. So the string you copied, you just have to paste it right here. So the string you copied, paste it right here. Then here where you can see we have this password, you just change it to the database password that you created. But before we do that, we need to encode the password. So take out this and add 2 single quotes in between with the plus symbol right here. Then you can paste this here, remove this, and also remove this. Now with this inside here, this encode URI component, you can pass in the password for the user you created. Remember, we created a new user right here. We created a new user, so the password you created, if you can't remember, just edit and maybe add a password you can remember. So with this string right here, then pass in this encode URI component. Then inside you pass in the database password that you, or the user password you created. So once you have this, now go back to your app.js. Right here we can import, we can say const db, or let me move this down here, const db, set it equal to require. Now we need to go into the config folder, config/secret right here, and then here you can replace these parts. If you don't want to use this local URL string, or you want to use this local URL string, you can just come right here, replace it with what you have right here. So I'll delete this and I'll say db dot. You can see we have access to this Mongo URI right here because we use this module.export. So right now we have our database URI added here. So if you want to deploy this, you don't need to add this maybe to a local or public repository. You can just add this to an environment variable and it will be made available right here. So now let me start the server. I can run nodemon app, hit enter. Then you can see, now you can see server running on port 3000, and also you can see MongoDB database connected. That is what I have right here inside this then method. So now our server is running. Now we have the setup. Now let us start with the views. Now create a new folder in the root called views. Now inside this folder, we are going to create some files. Remember, we are using the EJS template, so our files will need to have the .ejs extension. So I'm going to create some files inside the views. The first is going to be index.ejs. Then I'm going to create login.ejs. Then also register.ejs. Then I'm going to create dashboard.ejs right here. So I have all of these files created. Then one other file, I'll call it layout.ejs. So let us first of all work inside this layout.ejs. So what I want to do, what we have to add here, they are much, so I'll just go to the GitHub repository for this particular project, then copy what I have inside this layout.ejs. So basically this is just going to be like the entry template for the application. So every other application or every other template we have in our application will be rendered inside this layout.ejs, and that is made possible because we added this express EJS or EJS layout. So here we are going to add like the CSS or the style or font awesome or whatever we want to add here, and every other file like the index.ejs, dashboard.ejs, login, register will be rendered inside this layout.ejs file. So I'll go to the browser. Let me close this. So go to GitHub. Then I'm going to open the project right here. Now the link to this repository is added to the description of the project. So go into views right here, then open up layout.ejs. So I'm going to copy everything that I have right here. So copy, because I don't want to write all of this from scratch. So copy what I have right here, then go into your layout.ejs and you paste the code. Now what I just have is just the simple HTML tags with doc type. Then in the header tag, I have the link for font awesome. Then I also have this link here for the bootwatch, or rather bootstrap.main.css. Then I have this link here for the custom CSS, just a simple CSS. I'm going to create the folder right now. So inside your public directory, create a new directory called CSS, and inside create a new file called custom.css right here. You can see that is what is passed right here. So we have the CSS, no need of passing in public, no need of doing it like this, because we already defined it inside our Express static middleware right here. So there is no need passing in the public parts here. So you just need to pass in the other parts of the file, which is css/custom.css. The name of the app is passport login app. Then down here you can see I added there are some script added with jQuery because it comes with this bootstrap 4. So jQuery link, then popper, and also this bootstrap.main.js. Now another thing that is important you need to know, remember I said every other file in our view will be rendered inside this layout.ejs. This is where they are going to be rendered right here. They're going to be rendered right here. And to render a file or a template using EJS, we use this open anchor tag %, then pass in body because we want all of the files to be rendered in the body, then %, then close anchor tag. So you just copy from the repository, add it to our layout.ejs. So the next thing we need to do is we don't really need to worry much about this file because we have Bootstrap, we have the custom CSS file, we also have font awesome available. So to get started now, let's go to our index.ejs. Now, from the index.ejs, I'm going to copy the file or copy the code. Go to index.ejs, copy this. I don't want to type all of this out. That is why I'm copying it out. Then paste right here. So because we are using Bootstrap here, we have a div with class row. Remember here, all of these are added to this div with class container. So we have a div with class row. Then let me just remove, I think I have another class here. I don't need this row one class, you can take it out. Then we have a div with class column md6, then m auto. These are just classes available in Bootstrap. Then we have these other classes. So what we just have here is this p tag which says create an account or login. So we have a link to the registration page and also a link to the login page. So when the user visits the page or the application, this is the page that will be rendered first. So right here, using anchor tag with href /. Right now, we don't have any route set up for register and login. We are going to set that up. But for now, I'll save this file and then I'm going to create a new folder. But before I create the new folder, let's just paste the custom CSS. It's a simple code. So go to the repo and then copy this out. So copy this, go to custom.css and then paste the code right here. So it's just body, giving it a height of auto, the container, the Node.js icon, setting the color and the anchor tags. So save this and then I can close this. So now I'm going to set up a new route or a new folder called routes so that we can add our routes. So create a new folder called routes. Then inside the route folder, create two files. One is going to be index.js and the other is going to be users.js. So add index.js and users.js. Now inside the index.js file, we need to set up our route. So I'll say const express equal to require express right here. Then we need to get the router. So const router equal to express.router. So we get this method from the express middleware. Now with this router, we can then add our get route or post route or delete or whatever routes you want to add. But since our index page will only have to be displayed, we don't really have any thing going on that page. So we are going to say router.get. Then this is just going to be /. So when the user visits the application, it will just go directly to the index page. And then we can add the callback with request response right here. Now, Express makes available a render method, and that render method will allow us render the templates. So we're going to call res.render. You can see right here. And what we want to render is the index page. So whenever we visit this route, we are going to render the index page. So this is what it means right here. So whenever the user visits the page or the application going to this part, we are going to render this index.ejs file. So because we've already set the views, you can see we already set our view engine right here. So Express will just look for a folder called views. Then inside the folder, it's going to look for a file called index with an extension of EJS. So it's going to find this file and then render whatever is in this file. If it does not find this file, then it's going to throw an error. Now we need to just say module.export equal to router. So if we want to add any other route, we can add a get route, a post route, a delete, a patch right inside this file. So, but for now, we are only adding the route for index. Then go into your app.js. We need to add it right here inside our app.js file. Add it as a middleware. So down here, I'm going to say app.use, then /, then comma, we need to add require we want to require this index.js file. So /routes/index. So right now what I have done here is I am using this app.use middleware to require or pass in our index.js file. So every route that is defined inside this index.js file will always have this extension right here, which is the /. So if we have something like welcome, so if you want to visit this index page, we are going to have in your URL http, we are going to have something like this, http:// localhost 3000/welcome. So this is how the URL will be. Once you visit this URL, it's going to render this index.ejs file. But if we remove this welcome right here, then do it this way. You don't need to pass in the welcome. Visiting the URL this way will just render the index.ejs file. So now I'm going to save this now. If I open up, you can see that this server has been restarted. So now let's go to the browser. So open it up, localhost 3000. Now we don't need to add any other thing right here. If we try, it's going to throw an error, cannot find or get this part because we don't have any of that part defined. But if we go this way, now you can see the index page. This is how the index page looks. This is the link to go to the register page. This is the link to go to the login page. So what I have here is just an icon. So if I open my index.ejs, you can see this icon right here. That is what is defined or displayed here. We have the message with the two anchor links. So now we have a way of rendering our index file. The next thing I want to do is we create a new route for registration and login. Now let's do that inside our users.js file. So open your users.js file. Let me just copy everything I have here. Then go to users.js right here. But this is going to be, I will set this as register. Now this will go to the register.ejs file. So it's going to look for the register.ejs file. But remember, here inside our index.ejs, we are going to /users then /register. But here I'm just only defining register. Now to do this, I'll define it here, app.use /users, then require routes/users. So whenever a user visits this route /login, this will be appended to the URL, just like this, http://localhost 3000. If the user goes to probably register, then this will be displayed. Or if the user clicks on this button, right here, it will go to users/register. So this is how we defined it right here. So we've defined both our routes inside the Express middleware. So I'll save this, close this file. Now go to your users.js. We already have this defined. Then open up the register.ejs file. Go to views and then register.ejs. I'm going to copy all of this as well. So copy all this and then paste here. Now we are going to get some errors because we don't have any of this defined here. You can see this messages.length and whatever, we don't have them defined right here. But what we can do is, let me just come right here and inside the render method, right here in the render method, add curly braces and pass in messages right here. Let me just pass it as an empty array right now. I'm going to show you how we can passing the errors right here using connect flash. But for now, creating this curly braces messages, then set it equal to an empty array, because I don't want to get any error where we try to view this page. So what I just have here is simple. I have a form with the name, the email, the password, the confirm password, and I have the register button and the login button as well. This right here is just used for validation. If you don't want it, you can just take it out, but you can leave it here. This is just for validation purposes. So here, if we have any error inside the messages array coming from this render method, then we just need to loop through it and then display the error messages. We are using the bootstrap alert and the alert danger right here. So we have the register templates. Let's go right here, reload this page, and let's try to see if I click here. Now you can see now I've been taken to the user/register page, and I have the form right here. So the name, the email, the password, and the confirm password. So we now have a way of displaying or rendering our register page. Now let's work on this register page by adding our validation. We're going to use the express validation module right here for this register validations, or this applications validation right here. So what I'm going to do is I'll close this, then go into my config folder. Remember that we've installed passport and also passport local. So create a new file inside your config. You can call it passport.js. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to require passport and also require the passport.local. We're going to create the passport strategy for sign up and also the strategy or the middleware for login as well. So I'll say const passport equal to require passports, then const local strategy equal to require passports. Then outside you get the strategy here. So we are using the local strategy because we want to use the email and password validation. Then also const bcrypt, we are going to use this later, but let me just add it, require right here bcrypt.js. So now we've required passports, local strategy, and the bcrypt module. Now before we continue with this file, there's something very important we need to do. We need to create our models. So create a new folder in the directory and call it models right here. We want to define how the schema is going to look like. So inside the models folder, create a new file, user.js. So create a new file called user.js. So here I'm going to require mongoose. Here require mongoose and also require bcrypt.js. Bcrypt equal to require bcrypt or bcrypt.js. Bcrypt.js right here. So now we need to create the schema. Remember, we have the name, the email, the password, and probably if you want to add dates or whatever, you can add it. So to do that now, I'll say const user right here, user schema equal to new mongoose dot schema. So this, if you want to create a new schema, you can using mongoose, you can do it this way. Now the schema, so all the properties we want to add, we add name, and it's going to be of type string. Then the next one is going to be email. It's going to be of type string as well. Password is going to be of type string. Now you can add other types, maybe add another property, and the type is going to be maybe boolean or mixed or numbers or whatever you want. You can add the date type as well. Dates, right here, type dates. And you can set a default value. So default will be date.now. So what this means is when a new data is added and we don't specify this date property, then it's going to add the particular time when, or particular date when that particular document was created. So if you are creating a new schema, you just pass in only name, email, and password without passing in this date property. Then it's going to use this default value as the value for that particular document. So we have this. Now we want to do something very important. Now whenever we add a new user or create a new user, we want to encrypt the password. Now we can either decide to go into our route, so do it, or inside the passport folder or file, but I want to do it right here inside my user.js. So whenever a new user is created, before the document is saved, the password will be encrypted. And I can do that using user schema.pre. Then I'll add the save method right here, and we can pass a callback to it. So the callback, I'm going to say async, then pass in right here the next function here. So this save hook, whatever we add here inside this method, will be executed before the data is saved to the collection or to the database. So what I want to do here instead is, before the data is saved, we need to encrypt the password and then save the password, because it doesn't make sense to save the password as just plain text. So we are using bcrypt. So here I'll say if this dot password. So what this means, if this password exists and this dot is modified, or here this dot is modified, then pass in the password. So if the password exists and the password is modified, this is just made available from this bcrypt module. Then what I'll do right here is I'll say this dot password. Now this dot password is making reference to this password here inside the schema. So this dot password is making reference to this. So if the password exists and the password is modified, then I want to set this password equal to the encrypted password. I'll say await bcrypt dot hash. We have the hash method. Then I want to encrypt this dot password and pass in the sort value. I'll say 10. You can add maybe a higher value or whatever. This is how much the password or the hash that will be added to this password. Then here we just pass in next. So once it's able to encrypt the password, this next method will be called, so it will move on to the next execution. So what I've done here is user.pre, then passing in this save method, then async right here. Now sometimes inside this bcrypt, using this arrow function doesn't really work. So in order to prevent that, let's just use the normal function right here. So I don't want a situation whereby after adding this, it does not work, the arrow function. So let's just play safe at this moment. So calling the save method and async, then function, passing in next. If this dot password and this dot is modified, that is the password, then set the password here, or whatever password the user is sending, equal to the hashed password. So hash the password and set it equal to this field. Then once that is done, move on to the next execution. Then down here, I'm going to say const user equal to mongoose dot model, passing the name of the model. I'll call it user, then user schema. Then down here, I'll say module dot export equal to user. So with this now, we've created our model. We can then call this function or this model inside our passport.js file. So down here, I'll say const user equal to require models/user right here. Now, since we are using session with Express, Express provides two methods, the serialize and the deserialize methods. So we need to add those methods right here. So we say passport.serialize user. Now what this will do is, once the user has been created and the ID saved to the session, if we want to retrieve the user data from the session, this serialized user will be called right here. So this is going to be, we are going to pass in the user and the done callback. So this is going to be done, passing in null as the first property and user.id right here. So here is when the user is created, we are going to save this user ID to the session, so that when we want to retrieve the user property from the session, it's going to use this ID saved in the session, go to the database, then search for any user document where the ID is equal to this ID that is being passed right here. That is why we are passing this passport.serialized user. And if we go to our app.js, you can see we've already initialized passport and initialized passport session. Then the next method is passport.deserialize user, passing in function. Then we want to get or passing the ID and the done callback right here. So here is, remember that this user.id is saved to the session. Now we want to use this ID to fetch the user data from the database, and we're going to use user.find by ID. Now this is a mongoose method. Remember, we've already added the model here, so we are calling this find by ID, which is called from mongoose or made available via mongoose. So we want to pass in the ID, which is this, and which is what is saved in the session, and then we need to pass a callback with error and user. So if there's any error, this error object will be returned. If there are no error, then we return this user object, passing in here error or user. So what I have done here is, when the user is created, save this ID to the session. Then when we want to retrieve the user data, we get the ID from the session, then use it to find the document or the object for that particular user. Then the next thing I want to do is, I need to add the passport middleware. We want to work with the sign up first. So it's going to be passport.use. Then I'll give a name to it. I can call it local.signup. Then I'll pass new local strategy. Then I'll pass in an object right here. Now this object is going to take some properties like username field. Now the username field, because we want to use the email, I'll set it to email. Then password field, set it to password. Now these properties are coming from passports. Then the last one is pass request to callback, so that we can have access to our request.body object or whatever is passed inside the request, and I'll set it to true. Now if you don't pass this right here, this property, you won't be able to have access to the request object. So we need to add this. If you are using just username and password, then you change this to just username. But because I want to use email and password for the validation, so I'm going to set it this way. Then after this, I need to add another callback, and the callback will take the request. I can pass in email, password, and the done callback right here. So what I've done right here is passport.use. This is a passport middleware. Just passing in the name so that I can use it to access this. The new local strategy. Inside the local strategy method, pass this object with username field, set it to email, password field, password, and pass request to callback, set it to true. Then after that, I'll pass in this callback with request. Now this request is not going to be undefined or null because we have set this pass request to callback property. So if you don't have this set, then this request object will always be null or undefined. Then the email is what is coming from here and the password. Then this is the done callback. So what I want to do is add my first validation. So I'm going to create an array, call it errors, set it equal to an index or an empty array. What I want to do here is I want to check to make sure that the password and the confirmed password are equal. If they're not equal, we need to display a message to the user. So I'm going to say if request.body.password. Now this request.body.password, it's coming from here. If I go to my register, you can see I have this name property. Where is it? On all of the input fields. So for password, I have the name property, which is password, and for confirm password is password2. So I'll say if request.body.password is not equal to request.body.password2. So if they're not equal, then I'll say errors.push. I'll push a message into this errors array. I'll say passwords do not match. And remember, we've already added our flash or connect flash middleware right here. You can see I've already added it, so we can just add it to the connect flash. So I'll say return done. Now I want to return this callback. The first property is going to be null, the second is going to be false, and then I'll say request.flash. The name of this is going to be error, and I'll just pass in errors, which is this array right here. So if both the password and the confirmed password do not match, push, this is supposed to be push. So push this message into this errors array and then return this done callback with null as the first property, false, then request.flash. This is made available because we've already added the middleware right here. You can see it, we've already added the middleware here. And then the first property is going to be the name you want to call that flash message. So if you want to retrieve it, you're going to retrieve it by this name. Then the second is going to be the message or the array or whatever you want to pass right here. So if they are not equal. Now, here, if they are both equal, then I'm going to show you how we are going to add validations to these fields as well. We're going to use the express validator. But before we get there, let's just finish with this part here. So if they're equal, I'll say user.find1. I want to check if this user does not already exist. And I will do that using the email because I have this email property. So I want to check if the email right here is equal, if it's available inside the database already. This email is what I have in the database as a field, whereas this email is the one coming from this callback. If you don't want to use this, you can then say request.body.email, whichever one you want. But I want to just use this email coming from the callback. So if this exists, pass a callback with error. Or instead of using a callback, take this out. Let me just use the then method. So I'll say then, pass in user, because this returns a promise as well. So user.find1, then pass in the property then. So if this user object is returned, that means a user with that email already exists because we want the emails to be unique. That means a user with that email already exists. So I will just say errors.push right here, passing the message user with email already exists. Let me move this, and then we need to call this callback right here. So if this user object is returned, that is contains values, that means the user with email already exists, then we pass this into the connect flash. Otherwise, if nothing is returned, that means the user is new, then we need to create a new user. So we need to create an instance of this user model. So I'll say const new user equal to new user right here. Then what are the properties? So the first is going to be new user.name equal to request.body.name, new user.email equal to request.body.email, new user right here dot password equal to request.body.password. Now here we are just using request.body.password, which is the plain text, but before the data is saved, it will be encrypted. That is why we added this pre-save hook right here. The data will be encrypted, the password will be encrypted before it is saved to the database. So I'm just using request.body.password right here. Then the next thing I need to do is call new user.save. Call this save property right here, and call done with null and user. Sorry, new user. This is supposed to be new user. You can do return here. So if there are no errors, then we create the new user, we save it, and we return this done callback. So now I can save this. I've added this passport.use middleware for local sign up. Let's just do for the sign up here. So I will just copy this so that we know we've added that into our passport.js file. Add this, then I'll change this to login. Now we are not creating a new user, rather we want to check if the user already exists. We check if the user already exists. If it does, then we compare the password in the database with what the user is sending. So I'm creating this errors array. Then user.find1, we check if the email exists. So here, instead of if user, this is going to be if no user. That means if this object is empty, either undefined, empty, or whatever, then that means the user does not exist. So I can say user with email does not exist. So if this is empty, then that means the email does not exist in the database, because this is for login. That means the user can't log in. Then I'll pass in or return the done with the request.flash method. Then I need to take this out. In fact, take these two parts out. But if the email exists, if this object is not empty, now we need to compare the password. We need to check if the password the user entered is equal to what already exists. Remember that we encrypted the password. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to use this bcrypt method. So I'll call bcrypt.compare. Now this compare takes in the string password and the hash. So the string password is going to be, you can either use this password here or the password coming from request.body. So I'll say password, then user.password. Remember I said if this is not empty, that means it's going to contain the user object with the name, the email, the password. Then the user object, I'll get the password, and this is the hashed password. So it's going to check if this password and this password, they are equal. So this compare method will unhash this, change this to a plain string, and then compare it with this. Then I need to add the callback, say error, then is match. So add this is match method right here. So I can say if error, then you can throw error. This particular error could be as a result of maybe a network error or internet error or server error. So we'll just throw error. Otherwise, if is match, that means if it returns an object or it returns this value, right, or this boolean, you can see right here, it says this is a boolean. If it returns true, that means the password, they are equal. So I can do done with null and user. So I'll say return. So return done, null, and user. That means if this boolean is true, that means the password, they are equal, they match. Else they do not match, I'll say errors.push. Then I'll say passwords or password is incorrect. Then copy this part right here and paste it here. Now you must be wondering why I used this errors array. Now the reason I use this is because if I go to the template, if you check your register here, I'm looping through the array. Even in my login, okay, I've not added the login, but because I used this for loop right here, that is why I passing or pushing this into the array. So once we call this request.flash, passing in this name here, which is error, is going to return this errors array, and then we pass it. Let me go into my routes, users route. You can see I set messages here to an empty array. This empty array will be replaced with this errors array right here. So I'm going to replace this empty array with this errors array. So this will now become an array, and then we are able to loop through it to display what we have inside the array. So now I have set up for the sign up and the login. So this is for passports. Now we need to add this to our app.js. We need to require this passport file. We can do that right here. Just say require config/passports. So now we have required this file inside our app.js. We can access this. If we try to sign up, we are not going to get anything. Now we need to go into our users.js file. Now we have the get route. Let us add the post route. So this is going to be router.post, because we are sending data. When you want to send data from the client to the server, you can use either post, or you want to create a new record, you use post. If you want to edit, you use put. If you want to delete, you use the delete. If you want to retrieve, you use get. Because we want to post data to the back end or the server, we are using router.post, and make sure that the URL is same as what I have here, which is register. Then the next thing is I'm going to add passports. Let me require passports here. So const passport equal to require passports. Now I'm going to call or add a callback here. So add a callback with request, response, and next right here. Then inside this callback, I'm going to say passport.authenticate. You can see we have this authenticate method. Then it takes in the strategy name. Because we are dealing with sign up, I'm going to call this local sign up. The reason why I added this is to differentiate between the login and the local strategy. So this is going to be local.signup, and then we can add the callback. In this case, this is going to be an object. So pass in the object. So first is success redirect. So where we want to take the user when the authentication is successful, I want to take the user back to the login page. Then failure redirect right here. So if it is not successful, take the user back to the same register page. Then we want to be able to display flash message. So failure flash, I'll set it to true. Then outside here, we need to add this request callback, response, and next. This is required. So inside router.post, we pass in the URL, which is the same as what we have in the get. Then we pass in our callback. Inside the callback, we call passport.authenticate, passing in the string for the local authentication, which is local.signup, because we are dealing with the sign up right now. Then inside this object, we pass the success redirect, where we want the user to be taken to if the sign up is successful. Then failure redirect, if it is not successful, then we want to display flash message, then we pass in this callback. But now, if the only validation I have on this page, if I come here, the only validation I have on this page is just the validation for the password and confirm password. Now, so that we should be able to display the flash messages, let me close this. Open up your views, go to register.ejs. You can see I've already set up this here, this if and this loop here to loop through the error message. And remember, inside passport, we are saving the errors inside this array, then passing it to request.flash. Now, in order to get that, you go into your register or the get route. So I'll say const errors equal to request.flash, then pass in the name, and the name here is error. So pass in error right here. Now this is going to return an array because that was what we defined right here. And we're going to set the array equal to these messages. So if there are any arrays or there are any errors inside the array, we are going to loop through it. That is why you see here I'm saying if messages.length is greater than 0. So only display this if the length of this array is greater than 0. Otherwise, don't display. So if it's greater than 0, then we loop through it and then we display the error message. So const errors equals to request.flash, then we get the error right here, because that is what, if you specify something like error message, make sure that is what you do right here, and then you have to call it here as well, error message. But I'm going to leave it as error right here. So I'm going to save this now. If we go back to our passport.js file, I think there's something I missed. Yeah, right here, const local, this is supposed to be passport-local, not passport itself. So we're getting the strategy from passport-local module. So change this to passport-local. Now let's go to the browser. I'll reload this page. Now let me just type something random here. If I click register, now you can see I have the only validation we have right now is for the password and the confirm password to check if they match. Because the passwords are not equal, we get this message right here that says passwords do not match. But we don't have validation for name or the email or even checking the length of the password. So we are going to do that right now using the express validator method. So you can open a new tab and check for express validator right here. So express validator, it's a middleware. So it's a set of express.js middleware that wraps around validator.js. So the first thing we need to do is you copy this so that we install the module. So select this. You can open a new tab right here. You can leave the other one running and you paste here. So this is going to install the express validator module. We just want to get some simple validations from it so that we can check or validate our name field, email field, and password field. Then the next thing is we need to copy this. We don't need to add the middleware into our app.js file. Once we call this check method, it's going to automatically add its own middleware. So copy this part. Copy this part right here. You can read through it so that you understand what it does. So I just want to show you the basic usage of this module. So copy that. We want to use it inside our, let me go back here. We want to use it inside our users.js file. Here, this is where we want to use it. So add this using destructuring, get the check and the validation results from express validator/check. Then the next thing is we need to add it here as an array. The validation, we need to add it as an array on our route. So since this is going to be the post route right here, I want to check, or I want to validate this. Well, let me put this here. Okay, yeah, this looks much better. So we want to use the check method. If we want to check if the email field is actually an email, we can use this property. If we want to check the length, so I think there are other, let me see, click here. There are other methods that are available. Yeah, I think there are other methods that are available, but for now, so I'll say check. I want to check the name field. So I want to make sure that the name field is not empty. So to check that, say not, which we are chaining these methods. Empty, not is empty. You can see the different methods that are available right here. You can check them. So what I want is not empty. But now I can either use it this way, then the error message that will be displayed will be the error message coming from the Express validator. But if you want to add your own custom error message, you say with message, then you just pass in the string here, say name field cannot be empty. So this is how you check if the name field, or make sure that the name field is not empty. If it is empty, then we call this with message method, which is going to display this method. Then check email, check that the email is not empty, is empty, and then let's pass in this message here that says email field cannot be empty. Then we can check also that the email field is actually an email, dot is email. Then you can type in with message saying email is invalid. Then for the password, you can do the same. So let me just duplicate this. I'll change this to password, and I can say password field cannot be empty, and then I want to check the length of the password. So I'll change this to something like is length right here. So I want to create a function. I'll call it auth validation results. Validation result. It's going to take the request, the response, and next. Now I want to get the validation result that is being returned. So I'll say const errors equal to validation results, then passing in the request. Now this validation result here is coming from this Express validator check. We've already imported it right here. So now the errors that are returned, we can either convert it to an object or we can convert it to an array. So I want to convert it to an array. So I'm going to say if errors dot array right here. So what this method is going to do is whatever is returned here is going to be converted to an array. Now if we want to convert it to an object, we just say errors dot mapped, but I don't want to convert it to an object. Instead, I want to convert it into an array. So if errors dot array dot length is greater than 0, now this is coming from here. Let's see. So if we go to validation results API right here, you can see the different methods. We have this array method, converts the result into an array. We want to convert it to an object, we use this mapped method. So if the length is greater than 0, that means there are errors. Then I want to loop through it, errors.array right here, dot for each with error. But before then, outside here, let me create a new messages array, which is going to be empty. So I want to loop through, then get the message. So this is going to be messages dot push with error dot message. So I'm going to push the message from this errors array into this new array, and then I want to set it to the request dot flash with error and then messages. So if there are errors, we add it to the request dot flash, and we redirect using res dot redirect. We redirect the user to the same page, which is users/register. So if there are errors, that means the errors.array.length is greater than 0, then loop through the array, pass in or push in the messages into the messages array, pass it into request flash, and then redirect the user. Remember that we already gotten the errors from this request.flash, set it equal to this errors property here. But if there are no errors, then what I want to do is just copy this part, cut this part from here, and then paste it here. So if there are no errors, then we call this passport.authenticate, then do whatever we want to do inside this object. Then I can say request.flash, display a success message here that says sign up successful. You can now log in. So we are going to see how we can get this request.flash success just the way we did for this error, and then we are going to display it on the login page. So if the authentication is successful, redirect the user to the login page, and we are going to display this message. So now what I just need to do is call this method right here, passing in request, response, and next. So save this now. What I want to do next is let's try this out, because we already set up our register.ejs file. So I'm going to try this out now. Hope we don't get any form of error. Let me reload this page. Click here. Now you can see our error messages are displayed. Name field cannot be empty. Email field cannot be empty. Email is invalid. Password field, and just like that. So we have our error messages being displayed. Now let us try out registering a new user. So right here, then add a password and then click register. Right here seems there is an error, or there are errors. So let's go to our console and let's see. It says user is not a constructor. So let's try to find out where we are getting that error from. Oh, this is supposed to be capital U because it's an instance of this, not the small u. So I'll fix that. Stop that, then save this file, then go back to the browser. Right here I'll say mark at test.com, yeah, and then click register. Now you can see we have been taken to the login page, but we don't have the login route set up. Now if I go back here, let me try and reload this page, see if we have something defined. So on MongoDB Atlas, right here, you click on collections. Now you can see the name of my database is test. I can change that. All you just need to do is in the URL, you change the name, and then you can see we have the users collection. Inside the users collection, you can see I have the user created, which is Mark Twain. The email, you can see here that the password is encrypted and the date has been added, and it automatically added this ID field and this underscore v, which is the version number. So you can see now that we are able to sign up a new user. Now let's quickly work on the login. So we already set up the passport middleware for login as well. So you can see we already set that up. So what I want to do is I'll go to the repo, open up my login so that I'll just copy and paste. So go to views, then login.ejs, then copy what I have here. So copy what I have right here and then paste the code here. It's just the same. So here we are going to display the success message. Then here we are going to check if there are errors and we display the errors. Then for the form, we have the email field and the password field. So I'll save that now. I can close that. Now we already have the middleware for passport set up. So go into this file, then maybe at the top here, you can see router.get/login, then passing the callback with request and response. Now because we already set up the request flash for success, so I can say something like this: const success message equal to request.flash, then this is going to be success. Now this is not an array. If I go back to my login, this is not an array. You can see here for the success we are not looping through any array because we just passed it as a string, not an array. And then I can copy this part here as well, paste here, then add the res.render. This is going to be login. So for this is going to be success underscore message. This is the same as adding success underscore message of type success underscore message. So this is what is used here in the layout for login. Here you can see, and this is what we have right here. If you don't want to do it, you can use the shorthand way. So you can use the shorthand way of success underscore message. Then the messages are array is set equal to this errors array. Then for the post, we don't need to add any validation. I can just do something like this: router.post, then log in, then pass my callback with request response next right here. Then I'll just call this here. So for the success redirect, if it's the login is successful, take the user to the dashboard. If it is not successful, take the user back to the login page, and then we are able to display the failure flash. So this is just what I need to do here. If you want to add validations for the email and password, you can do that on your own. Follow this process we added right here. So now I have added for login. Let's try to log in a user. So if I can remember the, here it says request dot, okay, it's a mistake here. Let me see where that's, okay, users.js. Okay, this is flash. Save this and then reload this page. Now if I say mark at test.com, then add the password, then click login. Now I'm having this error that says password do not match, so I need to fix that. So the reason why I'm having this issue here that says password do not match, if I go to my users.js, here you can see I'm using local.signup instead of local.login. So change this to local.login right here. So save this, then let's go back. If it's successful, we'll go to the dashboard. So then click on login. Now you can see we're taken to the dashboard page, but we don't have the dashboard route set up yet. So we need to set up the route. So now we can see that our login is working and our sign up is working as well. But we need a way to protect this dashboard route. So here, if I go back to the index page, then I click dashboard. Now we'll be taken to this page because we don't have the route set up, but we only want authenticated users to be able to view this particular page. So first, let's create the setup for this log or dashboard. So go to views, dashboard.js, and then just click here. It's just a simple HTML tags that are in there. So let me close this, and close passport as well. So go to your dashboard.js and then you paste the code. Now you can see here I have this property here which is user.name. If I try to run this, I'm going to get an error because we don't have this user defined anywhere. So first, let us define inside our index.js, let us define the dashboard route. So copy this get route. So this is going to be dashboard. Now change this to dashboard. Note, if you have maybe any of these folder files inside the folder, make sure you specify the folder here as well. So now I need to get this user object defined. Remember inside config passport.js here, when we define this serialized user and deserialized user, when the user is created, we save this user.id in the session. Then when we want to retrieve the user data, we use that particular ID to get the user object. Right here you can see, and that object is saved inside a user property, and we can access that user property from the request object. So here I'm going to define something like this, create an object, and I'll say user, set it equal to request.user. So this user, with this user, we can access whatever we have inside this object inside our template. So request.user, we can't directly use this request.user here. We can't use it directly here. So we need to pass it or set it equal to a user. You can decide to change it to my name, set it equal to request.user. Then in your templates, this is going to be my name.name. So this is just a variable name depending on what you want to call it. If you don't want to do it this way, you can go to your app.js and define a global variable, but I'm not going to define any global variable. Instead, I'm going to pass it from the res.render method. So the user object that will contain the name of the logged in user, the email of the logged in user, probably the encrypted password, and whatever data we have in the collection will be added to this request.user object and set it equal to this user property. Then here, the user, we can be able to view the user's email. And also here you can see we have a logout button, but we have not added the route or the functionality for this logout. So let me just save this file and then go back to this page. Now the reason why we got that error is because the request.user is not yet set, so we need to log in first. So let me see, let me just make a change to one of these so that the server will restart. Yeah, the server has been restarted. Reload this page and then go to login. So let me log in this user and then click login. Now you can see the name of the user displayed here. Welcome Mark Twain. This logout button is not working right now. So if I go back and I try to access dashboard/dashboard, you can see right here that I have this logged in user property set. But I need to log out and then so that we destroy the session for this particular logged in user. To do that, let's add this logout functionality. We already have the button. So we are going to go to /users/logout. So open up your users.js route. Then down here, I'm going to create a new route. So I'll create the new route.get. Then it's going to go to log out, passing response on or request and response. Now to log out, Passport makes available a logout method. So we'll call, once this route is visited or we click that button, we'll call res.logout right here. And then we want to display a flash message, which is going to be success message. And then the message is going to be you are logged out. And we want to take the user back to the login page /users/login. So this logout method is from Passport. So once this route is visited, this method will be called, the user will be logged out. That means the session for that user will be destroyed. Then we pass in this flash message and we redirect the user back to the login page. So I'm going to save that. Right now, we already have the button defined here. So now I have to go back to the index page, login, and let's see if it's going to work. Now we are on the login or the dashboard. Then if I click this button, it says res.logout is not defined. So let's see why. So I think this is supposed to be request, not res. So this is supposed to be request.logout. This is supposed to be request.logout, not res.logout. Now you can see it says you are logged out. So let me log in the user again. Then click login. Then from here, click log out. Now you can see that the logout functionality is working. Now let me try to access dashboard. Now you can see I'm getting this error because the user is not set in the session. So what we need to do now is we need to protect this route so that if a user is not logged in, they can't access that route. They will be redirected to the login page. Now to do that is very easy. Passport makes available a method called is authenticated. Then we can use that method to check. So inside our config folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'll call it auth.js. Now I'm going to create a method, but I'll use module.export so that we can use it outside of this file. And I'll call it ensure authenticated with request response next. So what I want to do is we are going to check using the is authenticated method from Passport. If the user is authenticated, then allow the user to view that particular route. Otherwise, redirect the user to the login page and display a flash message. So I'll say if request.is authenticated. This is from Passport. That means if the user is authenticated, then return next, call this next method. So it's going to move or allow the user to access that particular page. But if the user is not authenticated, then display a flash message or an error message that says, please log in to view this page. And then redirect the user back to the login page. So if the user is authenticated, then they can be allowed to view that resource. Otherwise, they will be displayed, or this message will be displayed and they will be taken back to the redirect or the login page. Now we need to make use of this. To make use of this is simple. We need it inside our index page. So we're going to add it on the route that we want to protect. And the only route here we have is the dashboard route. So to do that, we need to import the file. So I'm going to import, I'll say const ensure authenticated from or equal to require config/auth. So we are getting this method from here, you can see, and then all we just need to do is pass it on the route that we want to protect, and that's it. So it's going to check. Once it checks, okay, this route matches what the user entered in the URL, and then it will move to this method. Then it's going to check if the user is authenticated, okay, then allow the user to move to the next callback. And inside the callback, we are going to render this page. But if the user is not authenticated, then we redirect the user to the login page and we display this flash message. So this is how you protect route. So every route that you don't want the user to get access to, most especially get routes that you don't want the user to get access to, if they are not authenticated, then you just need to pass this middleware on that particular route. So I'm going to save this now. Let me go back to the browser and let's try this out. Save this /dashboard. Now you can see, please log in to view the page. Now the user has been redirected to the login page. They can't access that particular route because they are not logged in. So if I log in the user now, then the user should be able to access that particular route. Now the user can access this route from here. Let's see, go back here, then let's try to access the route. Now you remember, because I did not click out this log out to destroy the session, if I close the browser and open the browser again, the user should be able to access this route because the user's value is still in the session. But if I click here, the user is logged out. If I try to access it, the dashboard, it will take the user back to the login page. This is far better than displaying or having that error that is unreadable. So with this now, we now have our login application. The user can sign up. We have authentication added. The user can also log in, and we also have a way of protecting the route. And also we have a way of displaying our data inside the cluster we created on MongoDB Atlas. So if you are not using MongoDB Atlas, you can use MongoDB or the local installation of MongoDB on your machine. You can extend the application to add more routes and then see how you can protect those routes, or allow only logged in users to access those routes. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos, and you can follow me on Twitter. Also, the link for the repository will be added to the description of this video.